Okay, so we record, and it's recording, and then I hit this. All right, everyone, so thanks for joining us. Stress, one of the topics that comes up a lot for me in office and practice, and then, just in my own life. So I'm really excited to share all of this information with you, and thank you so much for making the time. All right, so let's get this party started. Today, we're talking all about stress management. So for those who don't know me already, I'm Khadijah Douglas, a naturopathic doctor. This is pretty self-explanatory. I graduated from SCNM. I've taken several advanced classes in various fields of medicine. I work with clients in person at our office via Skype as well, virtually, so thank goodness for technology. And one of the principles of naturopathic medicine is finding the root cause. So I'm really passionate and dedicated to finding out why. So why is this symptom appearing? Why are you dealing with this now? So root cause medicine is really important to me. So tonight we are going to talk about stress, the stages of stress. We'll talk about your adrenal glands. How do you even know if you have stress? I hear that word thrown around so often. Oh, I'm stressed. What does it really look like? And then we'll talk about labs, supplements. I'll give you some fun lifestyle recommendations, and then questions and answers at the end as always. All right, so let's just dive right into it. And let's talk about stress. So the official, I would say, scientific definition of stress is a physical, mental, or emotional factor that causes bodily or mental tension. So it's physical, it could be mental, it could be emotional, and it could be something external, or it could even be internal. So if you're battling with, for example, like a really bad bout of a stomach flu, that's a stress on the body because you're not in balance. You know, external stressors could be any and everything. It could be opening bills. It could be your commute to and from work. It could be changes and fluctuations in temperature. That, even in itself, we don't think about it, but that is a stress. The body is having to adapt to a different climate. And there's all different types. And I always like to tell people, not all types of stress is always a bad thing. So I always give the example of, you're running away from or being chased or attacked. Your body needs to kick into preservation, fight or flight mode. So we have our acute stress that's in the moment, like I said, fight or flight. And then we have the chronic stress. That's the day in assault, day in, day out, constantly being bombarded and being attacked with some kind of stressful situation, and your body is now releasing these stress hormones. So when we talk about our stress, there's different stages. So the very first stage is the alarm stage, stress stage number 1. And this is, like I said, it goes back to that acute fight or flight. This is when your sympathetic system is activated. You're going to have an increased heart rate, right? Your heart has to pump faster. We need to get more oxygen. Your lungs are going to be expanding and contracting to get more oxygen in. You're going to be sweating. You might start fidgeting. And all of these things are happening because we have right now our attacker, our stressor is right there. It's on us. So we have to be quick to get away. So that's stage 1, really quick. And then we run into stage 2, which is the resistance phase. And this is now you've recovered. Your body is kind of relaxing now. You're winding down. And you start to feel good in this stage. But you also feel good, but you start to ignore the other stressors. And you think you can take more. So you're like, okay, I'm going to take on another project. Okay, I'm going to commit to another activity. I'm going to commit to another event. But really and truly, your body is still in this mode where it's trying to fight and cope and deal with it. So commonly, you have disruptions to your sleep. Now you might start to notice that you're cranky. People don't want to be around you. Maybe you're noticing that your work is suffering and that your concentration has changed. Your focus is not as what it used to be. And then you might even notice some mental health anxiety creeping up there as well. And then we have the exhaustion phase. This is where your body's like, I'm checked out. I'm done. I can't help you anymore. Like, I'm done. I'm going on a vacation. And so I think this picture sums it up pretty much. Like, I'm so tired. My tired is tired. You're so exhausted. You can't think straight. You know something is not right. you are just depleted. And this stage, unfortunately, I've seen often, and it just gets to a point where literally your body shuts down. It's like, I can't do anymore. I'm not helping you out. You've been ignoring the signs, and now I'm taking a vacation. So that's that phase. So just to really quickly recap, stage 1, that's your shock. Something has happened. We need to run away. We need to preserve body. And then resistance stage, that is going to happen, after the shock. This might happen, if you've been dealing with, maybe you're going through like a move. That's a huge event. Maybe you've had a sudden death in the family or loss. That could be a response. The exhaustion, what we start to notice is when things just really aren't going really well in the body. Okay, so remember we have 3 stages: alarm, resistance, exhaustion. Most clients that I work with, and most people that I meet in general, even just from conversation, they're right around this resistance, falling into this exhaustion phase. Ideally, we want to stay balanced, as you can see right there. All right, so let's talk about our adrenal glands, because these are going to be our friends when it comes to dealing with our stress. So we have 2 adrenal glands. You might, maybe you don't for some medical reason, but they sit on top of the kidneys. Remember, your kidneys are found in the back, right underneath your ribs. So you have 2 kidneys, so you'll have 2 adrenal glands. They're these lovely triangular fleshy organs, and they are wonderful. They are brilliant. They are amazing. And when it comes to stress, it's really important to focus on giving these friends some TLC. So our adrenal glands, you have a capsule, so an outer layer. Then you have the cortex and then the medulla. So what's amazing about this organ, even though it's really tiny, it produces so many hormones. So the cortex is actually broken down into 3 separate layers: the glomerulosa, fasciculata, reticularis. Don't worry, there will be no tests on these layers. So in every single one of these layers, you have hormones being produced. In this first layer, you have a hormone that helps with salt and water regulation, called aldosterone. In this second layer, you see how big this is, fasciculata. This is where you're making your cortisol. Reticularis is where we make estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. So remember, we have adrenal glands in men and women. Men and women produce testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone, okay? And then you have the medulla. That's where you make your adrenaline and noradrenaline. So lots is happening in these tiny organs. They are amazing powerhouses. And when we talk about our adrenal glands, from especially what I do, I look at your adrenal gland as what's going to help you cope with stress, what's going to help you deal with stress. And it's because of these hormones that are produced there: cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. So we have this very intricate pathway that gets triggered anytime we come into contact with a stressor. And once again, remember, stressors can be internal, they can be external. So for example, you're opening your bill, or you are late on a payment, or your partner broke up with you, whatever it is, your car broke down, you got a flat tire. So that stressor triggers this cascade. It sends a signal to your hypothalamus. Your hypothalamus then releases a hormone called cortisol releasing hormone that goes to the pituitary. It releases ACTH, and that hormone then is going to travel down to your adrenal glands and stimulate the specific zone to make cortisol. Okay, so it's going to stimulate the zona glomerulosa, fasciculata, to make your cortisol. Okay, and then once that cortisol gets released, it's going to target various areas in the body. And cortisol is very similar to your thyroid hormone in that many, many cells in our body have a receptor to cortisol. So we always want to remember cortisol is going to have widespread effects because it can bind to so many receptors. Now this pathway, this HPA axis, if we are constantly bombarding our bodies with stress, and we're constantly coming into contact with stress, this pathway gets tired, it gets exhausted, and that's when we start to hear words like adrenal fatigue, adrenal burnout, HPA dysfunction. So just keep in mind when we start getting to treatment, this is going to be a primary focus. How can we restore balance back to this axis so you have proper functioning of your adrenal glands, right? So cortisol, like I said, it's a steroid hormone. it starts with cholesterol. So cholesterol is our friend, right? In moderation, you have to have good cholesterol. Without cholesterol, your body is going to have a heck of a time making this hormone. So we need cholesterol. Like I mentioned, majority of the cells in your body are going to have receptors for cortisol. So some way, somehow, we're going to be able to respond to cortisol. Cortisol opposes melatonin, and it does that in that cortisol is really high first thing in the morning. It drops down, and then around like 6 o'clock, like now, your melatonin is starting to ramp up and get you ready for bedtime. So it's always highest first thing in the morning. Let me correct this. It's usually highest first thing in the morning if you have a normal stress response, all right? So this is what it normally should be. So you should see your cortisol levels high, 6:30 to 7:30, another spike 7 to 8 a.m., and then what you see is this gradual decline, and this is what normal should look like. We'll take a look at what some other abnormal adrenal fatigue, adrenal burnouts are. But as you can see, your cortisol is high first thing in the morning. It gets you out of bed. It gets you going. And you might be thinking, I am not hopping out of bed. I'm not getting out of bed. And that might be just because your cortisol level actually is down here. And I've seen that. It's normal. It is normal, but it's not healthy. All right? Okay, so cortisol in the body. I'm going to talk about some various organ systems in the body and how they're affected by cortisol. And the endocrine system, which is responsible for all of our hormones, is gravely impacted by cortisol, i.e. stress. So too much cortisol shuts your thyroid down. It increases levels of reverse T3. It increases your blood sugar levels, which then can turn into an increased risk of type 2 diabetes. Whenever we have surges of cortisol in the body, it actually goes to your liver and starts to break down fat, because we can use fat for fuel. So now we're increasing fat in the blood as well, and that can also increase your risk for gaining weight and that central obesity, right? People commonly complain, oh, Dr. D, I have like this like spare tire around my midline section. Stress, friends. Excess cortisol impacts your weight gain, and this is how it does it. So just stick with me. When we have high levels of stress, we have high levels of cortisol. High levels of cortisol results in low levels of leptin. Now, leptin is a hormone that gets produced and released, and it actually is supposed to tell you you are satiated, you don't need to eat anymore, you are completely okay. So it plays a role in hunger. But guess what? If you have low levels of leptin, then your body's not getting the signal that you're satisfied. So what do you end up doing? You feel like you're hungry all the time. And now you eat more, and you're probably not reaching for the best snack. So now your fat storage increases, and then your weight is going to be going up, all right? So cortisol is really huge in this. Once people start to get their cortisol levels intact, I've seen it, your weight will also be greatly affected as well, okay? And it has to do with the role of cortisol suppressing leptin. So remember, leptin is key. Leptin tells you you have eaten enough, stop eating, you're full. Lots of research and studies have been done on people who are obese and overweight. And what they find is they either have low levels of leptin or they have abnormal levels of leptin, which is contributing them to constantly eating. So cortisol plays a role in that. The immune system. So if you are constantly feeling like, I am sick all the time, why am I not feeling better? Why do I not feel like myself? Well, perhaps it's because of your cortisol. So on this side of the graph, this is your immune function, right? So obviously this is 100%, not obviously, but 100%, and then low. Over and then under. So anytime we have over, that's when you have like the active immune, autoimmune issues. Under, you have a low functioning immune system. We always want to be at this homeostasis. We always want to be balanced. So when you first start off stressed, things are okay with your immune system, and then look, this is where we get into this curve, right, that resistance phase, remember I was talking about earlier? Now your immune system is way too active, and then your immune system's like, well, I'm done with this, and then it shuts down in the chronic stage, right? So that's the exhaustion phase of stress. So people who have autoimmune conditions, stress is absolutely a component into the development of it. So you can have the genes and the DNA to have it. Now, whether or not you express the full symptoms of it absolutely is related to how much stress you're dealing with. And that just goes, and that's shown right here, okay? So when you start to get into that chronic resistance phase of stress, your immune system's just acting too much. It's overactive, it's attacking its own tissues, and now we're having issues. GI complaints, also something common with folks who are dealing with stress and burnout. So reason being, stress causes inflammation in the body. Anytime we have inflammation in the body, it decreases the integrity of our tissues. So in our gut, we have, and I do this all the time, and I'm going to get better with it, friends. So we have these things called gap junctions and tight junctions that are there so that we don't have food leaking into our blood vessels, right? So we never want food in the blood. Not where you want it. You want food in cells, inside vessels. Anytime we start to get stressed, we have inflammation, and we start to see a separation of these gap junctions. So they're no longer tight like they are here, but they start to loosen. And what ends up happening now is pieces of food end up in your blood, and that triggers an immune reaction. There should not be food, sugar, cholesterol. It should be none of that nonsense in your blood. Your blood should just have your blood. That's it. When we start seeing things like food, drugs, bacteria, that's when now we start seeing more inflammation. We're going to start to see GI issues. You're going to start to see autoimmune conditions arising. So stress absolutely can lead to leaky gut. Stress can cause constipation, bloating, diarrhea, so many things can happen because of it. So that's also another issue, another area that I definitely address and target as well. And then other areas, so reproductive, so it's going to reduce egg quality, and I forgot to throw in here, it actually reduces sperm quality as well. It lowers testosterone, right? So when I was a student clinician in Arizona, I had quite a few male patients that would always come in, and they'd be like, you know, doc, I have issues with my blood pressure. While you're at it, I'm having problems with erectile difficulties. And when we start to really get and address the root cause of it, their cortisol levels are really high. They're not able to produce testosterone, which helps with libido, which helps with maintaining and stabilizing an erection. So these things are really key. Same thing on the flip with women. When you have super high levels of stress, you are not in the mood to have, your body's not going to be concerned about having libido. It's really not, right? Whenever you are stressed, and I tell people think of it the simplest way, your body is concerned about preserving and just getting to the next day. So is it going to be concerned about maintaining your hormone levels? No. It's just going to make sure that your heart is still pumping and you're breathing to get you through. Excess cortisol increases blood pressure. So now we're at a risk for heart attack and stroke. Migraines, headaches, mood changes. This is really interesting. So stress, it weakens your bone health. So that's another issue. So now that can lead to things like osteopenia, osteoporosis. So friends, I hope you're understanding and getting it. Stress is not our friend, all right? So hopefully that makes sense. Now we're going to talk about, well, now that we've mentioned it, how do you know if you have an imbalance, right? So let's take a look at these lists of symptoms. If you have problems falling asleep, even when you're tired, that's a sign. And another thing that I'm big on is, what is your sleep quality like? So if you get 8 hours, but you're still waking up groggy, unrefreshed, feeling like you can go back to sleep, that is a sign of an adrenal dysfunction. If you feel like you're irritable and you're snappy a lot more than you are, that's another sign, right? Are you grabbing and reaching for a snack mid-afternoon? That could be a sign or symptom. Do you have that, like I said, that central obesity, that spare tire? That's another sign and symptom. Do you get sick often? Low libido? Are your cycles off? Do you have problems concentrating? Are your GI? Have you noticed changes in your bowel movement? Those are things that need to be addressed. And I always tell people, you know when something is off in your body and you shouldn't shirk it off. You need to address it right away, because if we leave it, then we end up in this adrenal exhaustion phase, which takes quite some time to repair. All right. So if you have answered yes to any of those, friends, I have some news for you. You probably are dealing with some kind of adrenal burnout, and your adrenals need some TLC, but don't worry, stick with me. I got some tips and tricks for you. All right. So that might be like, that's so me, right? I get that all the time. So let's talk about how we would even start. And for me, I think there is absolutely value in lab testing because it gives you a baseline of where a person is at. Me as a practitioner, and it's going to help me figure out where do we really need to start first. Maybe there's something that didn't come up in our intake that I also need to address. So lab testing is important. So complete blood count, CBC. Why is this important? Well, CBC is going to tell me what your red blood cells levels look like. It could indicate anemia. It can tell me what your white blood cells look like. Do you have an infection? If you're constantly getting sick, I absolutely want to know what your white blood cell counts are because we know that stress suppresses and reduces immune function. CMP, it's a comprehensive metabolic profile, and this is going to test things like your liver enzymes, so ALT, AST, it's going to test your pancreas, so it's going to look at glucose. It's also going to test your kidney function, so what's your urea, your creatinine, your BUN, so all those things come up on your CMP. Why do I care? Well, when you are stressed out, things like inflammation can increase and they can affect your liver, so your liver enzymes could be up. Your glucose is important. I need to know, are you in that pre-diabetic insulin resistance range or are you full-blown diabetic? So it's really key to know that number. I also run a hemoglobin A1C. So this is a snapshot of the past 3 months of what your blood sugar levels have been. So hemoglobin A1C, once again, it's an indicator for diabetes, prediabetes, metabolic syndrome, PCOS, various things. So I want to make sure that your sugar levels are once again controlled. Insulin, that's the key to know. That just goes back to that blood sugar level. C-reactive protein, I don't think we've ever spoken about that on previous webinars, but C-reactive protein is a lab marker that helps to assess inflammation in the body. So once again, remember I told you previously that that inflammation and stress go hand in hand. So it's nice to know, once again, if someone starts working with me baseline, where are their inflammation markers? Do they have inflammation? Because that also can help with treatment protocols and what we come up with. I love my thyroid hormone. I think it's beautiful. So I run TSH, reverse T3. Reverse T3 levels are going to be high when cortisol is high and when a person is stressed. Remember, reverse T3 should always be 0. I'm going to run antibodies because autoimmune conditions tend to rear their ugly heads when cortisol levels and you're really stressed out. Epstein-Barr virus and cytomegalovirus. So EBV and CMV, these are two that I am going to run because they have been linked to chronic fatigue syndrome. So if you have and EBV and CMV, by the way, once you get them, they stay dormant, and when you are stressed and your immune system is compromised, they rear their ugly heads and they can worsen fatigue. So perhaps your fatigue is not just stress alone, but it might be actually due to this virus that's just hanging out in the body. A lady that we just started working with at Infinite Wellness, she has very high levels. We ran her EBV, and lo and behold, they are sky high. So she is right now full-blown flare-up of EBV. So goal with that is, yes, we're going to address stress, but I also need to add and address immune system as well. And then obviously, because we're talking about stress, I am going to be running cortisol. So there's 2 types of cortisol that you can get tested, AM cortisol, excuse me, and then salivary cortisol. So AM cortisol obviously is first thing in the morning. There's an equation that we can, once you get that, we can run an equation and then figure out what your total daily output is. I personally prefer salivary cortisol. So we work with this cool lab company, ZRT Labs, and what they do is they'll ship you your own lab testing kit for you to collect your saliva. And you do it through several times throughout the day. And what it does is it's going to give you this lovely graph of what your cortisol levels are throughout the day. Why does that matter? Well, guess what? If you have no cortisol first thing in the morning when it should be high, that is going to guide treatment. If your cortisol is really high at night, which for some people who work shift work, for example, might be, that could be explaining why you have problems sleeping. So these are some examples of what the salivary cortisol testing looks like. So this is what a normal curve looks like. So the black is normal, right? So normal, right? First thing in the morning, we saw this spike. It's normal. And then it's going to start to die down around noon. And then 6 p.m., you should be winding down. 9 p.m. bedtime, it's done, okay? So that's normal, okay? Let's take a look at some different scenarios. So if you have burnout, adrenal burnout, look at where your numbers are. You're waking up in the morning with no cortisol, just non-existent, okay? Remember, it should be somewhere around 6 to 7, right? It should be around this mark. At noon, yeah, you still don't have any. And then as the day goes on, you're just struggling to get through. So that's burnout. And like I said, so when you're doing salivary testing, you collect 4 samples, as you can see, because then you get that lovely graph. So another example, chronic stress, okay? So once again, this is what our normal would look like. With chronic stress, people actually have really high cortisol in the morning, and then they stay elevated, and these people, you might notice, have an issue sleeping, falling asleep at night because their cortisol is so high. Melatonin is the hormone that should be dominating your evening. Melatonin comes in around 3 o'clock and it starts to rise. And that's when you're like, I'm tired, it's done, I want to wind down. But people who are dealing with chronic stress, guess what? They're still wired at 9 o'clock at night. So for them, a big, huge part of the focus of what I do is going to be getting their butts to sleep, right? So just some examples. But where do you start with all of this? You're probably like, I don't even know. And that's where I come in. That's where your healthcare practitioner comes in. And so I thought this was a little funny. I can't decide if I need a hug, 6 shots, or 3 months of sleep. I don't know. This person looks pretty wired. They probably need all of it. All right. So a lot of what I do is individualized medicine. So whatever our treatment plan is going to be comprehensive. I always give home, lifestyle, diet, supplement, all kinds of recommendations, recipes, etc. And your treatment plan is going to be dependent on you. So if you are dealing with that chronic stress where your cortisol is really high at night, my goal is going to be, first and foremost, to get you sleeping and get you quality sleep. So we're going to be doing a lot of things in the evening, part of your sleep hygiene, part of your sleep routine to get you in bed, to get you sleeping. If you're someone that your cortisol is just boom, high first thing in the morning, we're going to have to adjust it and bring it down so it's within normal. If you find yourself constantly grabbing for a snack or that extra coffee around noon, 3 o'clock, or you want a donut, and donuts are my guilty pleasure, I said it before, then we have to talk about how do we maintain your blood sugar throughout the day. So once again, it's just dependent on the symptoms, dependent on the client. You know, someone comes in and they're like, I just want to get rid of these last 10 pounds, but their blood pressure is 180 over 95. My concern is not going to be their weight. My concern is going to be your blood pressure. Okay, so it's just dependent. We address most concerning symptoms, but at the end of the day, the goal is going to be the same. I want to normalize your cortisol levels. So we have this lovely, pretty graph. That is going to be the goal. We want to get you back to the ebb and flow of what your cortisol should look like. All right. So now we get to talk about the fun thing. So that was a mouthful. We talked about stages, right? We have alarm, we have resistance and exhaustion. You know, maybe you already know that you're in the exhaustion phase. I know that when I graduated med school, I was absolutely in the exhaustion phase. Sleep was my friend, and that's all I wanted to do. So now we're going to talk about some of my favorite supplements that I recommend. And I recommend them because, like I said, I like to experiment on myself. I've seen them work because I've had success with them, and then my clients have had success with them. And then these companies that I also recommend are quality companies. If you were to Google like adrenal burnout or supplements for adrenal health, I'm pretty sure you'll come up with hundreds of things online. But I can't guarantee that they're going to work as well, and I can't guarantee that they're not coming from someone's garage. So I always tell people, make sure you know where you're ordering from and it's a trustworthy source, which is why we love Full Script in our office. It's our online dispensary. Even if you don't purchase anything, feel free to go and just sign up, and then you can peruse the hundreds of supplements, quality practitioner supplements that are there for you. All right. So In our dispensary, some of the things that we love, and I actually have this here today because I take this one, Active B Complex by Integrative Therapeutics. So active, what does it mean active? So your B vitamins need to be activated for the body to be able to use them. So when it says active, it means it's already in its active form. Your body's not going to have to convert it, which I love, because guess what? When you're exhausted and when you're burnt out, the last thing that you want to do is have to worry about converting a vitamin to its active form, right? That's not what we're trying to do. And when I'm trying to help you recover from adrenal burnout, I want your body to rest and do the least amount of work as possible. So Active B Complex, you have your vitamin B6 in its active form. You have folate in its active form, which is methyl, and then B12, which is methylcobalamin. So always keep that in mind. And so once again, dosing would just be dependent on the person. Now, if you want that extra shot, that jolt of energy, B12 chewables are going to be what you need. So people often say, oh, I got a B12 shot from my doctor, and I was a brand new person. I could run a marathon. I had so much energy. B12 is going to be it. It's like that instant jolt. It's cherry flavored, and I'm going to be honest, it doesn't taste terrible. So you chew it, let it dissolve, and get into your bloodstream. It's awesome. So those are where I start. Now, this would be ideal for someone, okay, case in point, we have a patient, she just finished her first year of her nutrition program. So for her, she hasn't hit that complete end phase of resistance, end phase of exhaustion fatigue. So she's right at the acute beginning resistance stage. So for her, we've recommended, she's been on the Active B Complex, and that's been really helpful for her. B vitamins play a very key role in cortisol and adrenaline health and just adrenal health overall. So giving the body back what it needs is key. So those are B vitamins. And then because this is talking about stress and adrenal support, then obviously we need something for our adrenals, right, friends? So these are my non-glandular recommendations, and I'll talk about what glandulars are in a second. So adrenal SAP, I'm going to just say right now, this got me through medical school. This thing right here is awesome socks. It contains a blend of vitamins. So there's vitamin C, you got your B vitamins in there, but it also has different botanicals in there that specifically target your adrenal glands. And one of them in there is licorice. So licorice is pretty awesome. It doesn't disrupt your body's normal production of cortisol, but what it does do is it actually helps to keep cortisol in the body for longer. So instead of it being removed by the kidneys, it actually helps to keep it in there for a little bit longer, which is pretty cool. So adrenal support, like I said, I could say so many great things about this company, but this right here was huge for me getting through school. Cortisol manager. So this one I often recommend in the evening for people to take. We have one client, he is, I want to say mid-30s. He owns a couple businesses. He travels quite a lot. And for him, his biggest things were his cravings. So he would have terrible sugar cravings. He loved iced tea, would drink almost a gallon a day. But when stress was really bad, he would become very irritable. His wife sent me an email thanking me. She goes, I don't know what you gave him, but this has been a game changer with him in helping manage his stress. So those would be the two. Once again, this is a combination of herbs, vitamins, and amino acids that support the stress response that also provide a calming, relaxing effect as well. So those are non-glandulars. Now we're going to talk about glandulars. So the whole idea of glandular therapy is essentially to use tissue from an animal to support healthy functioning of your own. Now, I don't go to glandulars as first. So first is going to be home, lifestyle, then we'll do the B vitamins, then we'll do some botanicals. This is going to be when someone's crawling into the office because they have no energy. And I do this because their adrenal glands need a complete break, but they also still need to function. So by providing them with the tissue, it's going to help give them the hormones that they're missing. So it's going to contain the vitamins, the minerals, the enzymes, everything needed for your adrenal glands to function. This one, obviously, because it is coming from an animal, if you are a vegetarian or a vegan, it's not going to be ideal for you. And I actually have this one here too, Adrenal. This bad boy, I've had great reviews, success, client success in Amazon. Oh, look at that. It says not for sale through Amazon. So if you find this on Amazon, friends, it's not legit. Someone's stealing your money. Professional strength, not for sale. That was very interesting. Good job, Orthomolecular. All right, so Adrenal is going to be, like I said, something that I go to after we've done home and lifestyle, after we've done the herbs, after we've done the vitamins. This person is like, I just can't. This is what I'm going to use as a go-to, very strong. Once again, not good for your vegetarians or vegans because it is coming from an animal. That's just the only issue. All right, so we've talked about how we help the adrenals, but remember there's other symptoms that people might have, and one of the biggest things that is often impacted is going to be sleep and sleep quality. So no matter what stage of stress you're in, we have to support your sleep because remember, quality is going to be key. Even if you're getting 5 hours, I need it to be the best 5 hours. You wake up feeling like $1,000,000. So these are my two go-to sleep supports. Insomnitol, you know, the name is pretty smart. Good job, Designs for Health. Insomnitol contains a blend of botanicals. Melatonin is in there, and then amino acids. So GABA is in there, L-theanine, melatonin, and then I believe rhodiola. And all of them is going to, the whole idea is to get your body relaxed, calm, and ready to just have a great night's sleep. My all-time favorite, Natural Calm. This is a powder. It's called the anti-stress drink. It comes in different flavors. Cherry, lemon, unflavored, etc. Magnesium. And so I have people take this 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime, place it in some warm water, you drink it, and once again, like the name says, it's to calm you down, it's to relax you, get you ready to have a restful night's sleep. So Natural Calm is awesome. They actually have a Natural Calm for kiddos as well. So this is something that I commonly, it's like a go-to for me as well. All right. Now, like I said, GI is often targeted and impacted with stress and adrenal health. So these two things are my friends. Probiotics. Probiotics are key. Whenever we have stress, our microbiome, so all the bacteria in our gut, they suffer. And they suffer because they're not, you know, being fed the right things. It's just not the proper environment to be in. So Clear Labs, they do a really great job at creating various blends, but Clear Labs Therabiotic Complete, this is the powder. They also have a capsule form. For those who know me and who are clients and on this call, they know that Dr. D is a big fan of powder. Why? Because you just absorb it better. For most people who are walking around with some form of stress, whether it's the beginning of the resistance phase or the end of the resistance going into exhaustion phase, you have some stress. That means you have some inflammation, you have inflammation in your gut, and you're not absorbing well from your food. So probiotics and so powders and liquids as a whole are going to be key. The second thing here is GI Revive. It's going to revive your GI. I mean, I couldn't think of a better name if I tried. This contains botanicals. It contains glutamine. Glutamine is really key for helping to increase integrity. Remember we talked about those gap junctions, to strengthening the gut lining, which is affected often with stress because of the inflammation. So before I really start giving people heavy-duty supplements to take, I need to make sure that, first of all, their gut is in good shape to even receive it. And so GI Revive is often part of many people's protocols because you have to make sure that your gut is healthy, right? No point in me giving you and you spending all this money on supplements if your gut isn't in good shape to receive it and absorb it. So GI Revive, it's like a lemony flavor. Once again, it is available in capsules as well, but powder is key. Take that once a day. And I have people take it for 2 to 3 months. And once again, it's just depending on the severity of where your stress is at. What are your symptoms? And we get all that from intakes and working together. All right. And then blood sugar support. So when I get stressed, my friend is donuts, possibly even cake, donuts specifically, and then cookies. Okay, so for me, it's something sweet. So I need to make sure that my blood sugar is maintained. So glycemic manager is great to help support making sure that you're not having those crashes and spikes throughout the day. That is a stress on the body. When you go from having sugar and then all of a sudden to none, that is a stress in your body. When you go long periods of time without eating, that is a stress. So you might not think it's a stress, but your body's sitting there kind of like, well, I'm hungry. Where's the food? Give me something. And then that will right then and there triggers release of cortisol. And then that's going to spike your blood sugar. So that's how those two things work. So glycemic manager, once again, it's going to contain chromium. I know for sure is in there. Chromium helps with insulin, proper insulin management, and then just overall blood sugar support. So glycemic manager is a go-to. I usually have people take one with every meal. All right, so that's supplements. Like I said, if you work with me before, you know my bread and butter is home and lifestyle. You have to make the lifestyle changes stick. No matter how many supplements I give you, if you are still dealing with the same home and lifestyle situations, it's not going to help as well as it could be. So home and lifestyle recommendations are key, and let's get into them. So I thought this was really cute. I saw this on my friend's Instagram. This applies to anybody. So she believed she could, but she was tired. So how many people are tired? So she rested, and you know what? The world went on, and it was okay. She knew she could try again tomorrow. So I thought that was really encouraging. I really liked that. And I put this here just to say, sleep is key. If you know you're tired, rest. Give your body the rest that it needs. When our bodies are resting, that's when the healing occurs. That's when the repairing occurs. Your body, when you're going at 100 miles per hour, it can't stop to, repair your gut lining. It can't stop to deal with your thyroid health. It doesn't have time. It's just concerned about keeping you at that speed that you're at. So rest is okay. And being okay with giving yourself rest is key, because then you can try again tomorrow. So sleep, super, super important. I have people that sleep 10 to 12 hours and still say they need a nap. That is a red flag. That's a signal. We need to work on it. But sleep quality is key. All right. So here are my lovely home and lifestyle recommendations. Meditation. Lately I've been seeing a lot of ads, and I don't know what that's about, probably tracking my Google searches. I don't know. But I've been seeing a lot of ads for the Calm app. So I actually downloaded it. And now meditation is not my thing. But I was told by someone who does practice meditation that even if you can turn your mind off for 10 seconds at a time and then let it wander, come back to what you're doing. So the Calm app is wonderful because you don't have to sit there for long periods of time. It's like they give you like 30-second intervals. So like, do nothing for 30 seconds. And you do nothing for 30 seconds. Meditation. Think about people who like are Buddhist monks and are yogis. They tend to have lower blood pressure. They tend to have lower resting heart rate. They tend to have higher oxygen percent saturation, meaning that they have higher levels of oxygen getting to their blood cells. And that's because they're really good at just clearing their mind, breathing, and just being. All right. Journaling. Journaling is completely cathartic. Everyone should journal. I journal because sometimes you might not have someone to speak to. And if someone cuts you off when you're trying to get to somewhere, if someone says something mean to you and you don't have someone that you can share that with, write it down. And you can be like that person, like you can really get into it, right? So journaling, very relaxing. Very cathartic. And I always tell people, get it out. Don't keep it in. When you keep it in and you let that stress build, we manifest symptoms and we manifest signs. I always use the analogy, if you look at your body as a bucket, you have things that go in and things that come out. When your bucket fills up, we manifest symptoms, we manifest signs. People's buckets are overflowing, and stress has a huge role in that. So let your bucket free up, guys. Journal the crap out of everything. Deep breathing. For those who have signed up for the webinar, I will be sending out a handout on deep breathing. Deep breathing is wonderful. Exercise depends on what stage of adrenal fatigue you are in. Therapy. So I recommend therapy, a counselor, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a therapist, someone that you can speak to just to help you. Sometimes you need someone who's not a family member, someone who's not your partner, someone who's not your friend, because we all have that friend that's going to give you advice that might not even have their life together, right? So a therapist is going to be that neutral person that you can just go to and express things that maybe you've just been holding on to for a while. So we have someone that just shared another app. So brainwave therapy. All right, so I will share that. Thank you so much for that. I will share that with everyone at the end of this recording. Brainwave therapy is another great app to help you as well. So thank you for that share. Have a protein-rich dinner snack in the evening. Why protein? Well, when our bodies break down protein, it helps to create some of the precursors that make melatonin. Melatonin is your sleeping hormone, so it's going to be helpful. And then tart cherry juice. For those of you who follow us on Instagram, last week I talked all about tart cherry juice. It's a natural source of melatonin. Tart cherry juice has been studied in terms of its efficacy for a sleep aid, and guess what? Just as effective. So instead of turning, and once again, I'm never anti-medication, but several of these medications that are prescribed for sleep leave people feeling groggy, are highly addictive, and might not even work. So why not just go to the grocery store, buy some tart cherry juice, 6 to 8 ounces, 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime to help get you sleeping. All right, wonderful. Tart cherry juice. Oh, and remember, the only ingredient should be tart cherries. It shouldn't be sugar. It shouldn't be high fructose corn syrup. No, tart cherry juice. It is tart. Wonderful source of melatonin. Give it a shot. All right, so now we're going to talk about, lovely another message. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Thank you for sharing. All right, so we've talked about home and lifestyle, dietary. Well, you know it wouldn't be a Dr. D webinar if I didn't talk about food, right? I love food. I said this again, and I'm going to say it again. Food truly can be your medicine. I am not perfect. I have my moments. I've told you before, I love my donuts. I pass the donut shop every single day on the way to work. I pass actually 4 donut shops in a 10-minute drive. Yeah, it's crazy, right? But I pass them every single day on the way to work and home from work, okay? But donuts every day, excuse me, donuts every day are not going to help with my stress and me dealing with stress. So a whole foods diet. What does that even mean, Dr. D? Okay, whole foods diet, shop the perimeter, essentially. Whole grains, real food, fruits and veggies. You know me, I'm all about your 5 to 9 servings of vegetables a day. Limit your fruits because they have high sugar levels, especially if you're concerned about weight gain. You know, lean cuts of protein. And it doesn't have to be from an animal. It could be tofu. If you are using tofu, make sure it is USDA organic for all my Canadian folks. Make sure it has that Canada Biologique Canada. Make sure it has that logo on it or USDA. Okay, buy and have your tofu that way. If you're eating turkey, lean, grass-fed, that's what we want. Chicken, grass-fed, that's what we want. Okay? And that's, you know, try to have quality protein and fats with meals. Even eggs, amazing source. I love eggs. The entire egg, too. A hard-boiled egg because you get the protein, but then you also get the cholesterol, which helps to make cortisol. Genius, Dr. D. Genius. All right. And then good quality fats with meals. So these are going to be your nuts. When I say fats, I'm not talking about like, I don't know. I'm not talking about like the cheesesteak at the bodega. That's not what I'm talking about. Good quality fats. Woo, boy, excuse me. Avocado. Good quality oils, like sauteing your vegetables in olive oil, in coconut oil, are going to be really helpful. Limit the processed and refined sugary foods. You know me, I'm queen of moderation, but if someone's coming to me in that exhaustion phase, guess what? We have to be really strict. And I'm going to tell you, no refined sugary foods, no processed foods. But as you start to get better month to month, I'm going to say maybe you can have Subway more than once a week, right? That was for a certain client. They know who they are. Avoid your food allergens. This is key. Once again, goes back to the inflammation in the gut. Common food allergens nowadays that we see, wheat and dairy. So if you're not too sure what your food allergens are, I would start by eliminating one for a good week. See how you feel without it. I'm going to tell you right now, if people really commit to reducing even just like sugar or white bread or wheat from their diet, they will notice a difference. Caffeine, avoid it as much as possible. People who turn to caffeine, they're like, I just need this cup of coffee to get me through. We need to talk. And then increase your use of cinnamon and turmeric. So I love cinnamon because it helps stabilize your blood sugar, and I love turmeric because it's anti-inflammatory. And remember, whenever we have stress, we have inflammation, so it's going to work. One of the things that I like to recommend, and I forgot to add it, but once again, I'll send it out with the replay, is golden milk. So golden milk is delicious. You can buy Gaia Herbs sells the powder that you can just add to milk, or you can make it on your own. It's turmeric, it's cinnamon, it's black pepper, a little bit of honey, or maple syrup to sweeten it, and whatever kind of milk. Obviously, my preference is going to be for you to use like a plant-based or nut milk. I just saw a message up. I'm smiling. So golden milk is going to be helpful as well. I have people who do golden milk before bedtime, and they say that that's been really helpful for them as well. All right. So I think I'm finished talking your ears off. So I want to say thank you all so much. Now you know it's time for Q&A. I have a couple questions already in the comments that I saw, so I'll get to those. But thank you so much. For those who are watching the recording, this is where I cut it off. For those who are on, we'll stay, and then we'll continue to chat and answer and address some of your questions that you have for me. So thank you, everyone, for attending. If you're on live, stay. I'm going to stop the recording now. All right.